Browse a more protected internet with NordVPN.
I hate to tell you this, but Megara never actually loved Hercules, and that might shock a lot of you. Now, I was rewatching the Disney animated classic Hercules, and I realized that the music is pretty good and the storytelling is awesome too. Like, out of all of the Disney films I would rewatch over and over again as a child, Hercules was not one of them. I only remember the beginning and the very end. But with a fresh pair of eyes, I realized that Megara doesn't actually love Hercules. She doesn't feel this way. Now, once I tell you this will change the way that you watch the movie Hercules forever. So make sure you save this for later, share with a friend, and of course, hype the video so other overthinkers like yourself can also have their childhood ruined. See, early in the film, we learned that Hades basically has a plan to overthrow Olympus. Now, he initially attempts to do so by getting rid of Hercules as a child, but that backfires and he grows up. So instead of using his little minions to go get Hercules, Hades sends Hercules' dream girl. Or so he thinks. Because in the film, there are multiple times where Hercules is set up by Hades by using Megara. The first time is when he fights the centaur. The second time is when he goes to the city to save those children from the Hydra. He of course wins and goes back home. Now it's at this point that many will point out and say, hey, she was falling for him at this point, but I beg to differ. In fact, I feel like Megara in this moment felt guilty about pulling somebody along. The only person that can give her that freedom is Hades, and she has to do anything he says in order to get that, even if that means getting rid of Hercules. So this isn't necessarily her falling in love, but this is her being concerned for somebody else's well-being. Now then, the last time that Hades sends Megara, he basically says, use your womanly wiles to woo him. She says, no, that's crossing the line, I'm not willing to do that, until Hades tries to say, hey, he was just a man. A man just like your ex-lover who walked away and found another woman, and she sold her soul for that deal. But something's different when the last time they meet. She goes to his house and basically goes on a date with him. Now then, on this date, they go see many things, including the Oedipus play. Now then, if you know what that is, leave a comment down below. But they finally come back to Hercules' garden at his own house, where even though Megara had a good time, she was still on job. So she then uses her womanly wiles to try to get Hercules to spill his secret, his weakness. But Hercules plays it off and says, I have none, which he doesn't. But it's this moment where he basically gets up close to her, trying to confess to her that he kind of digs her. But it's in this moment where she basically steps away. She's reluctant. She doesn't necessarily want to hurt his feelings. She steps back. But what she steps back into is this little Cupid statue. Now, am I saying that Cupid made her fall in love with Hercules and she didn't actually love him? That's exactly what I'm saying. And there's proof of this too, but I'm gonna get there in a second. Because after she steps into this, she looks back behind it, only to take a double take and look at it again. And it's in that moment where she chooses that I love this man, and she has her whole song about it. But I hear you asking, how could this statue actually cause somebody to fall in love? Well, that's because the gods of this universe actually can take control over statues. For example, in that same song where she sings about how much she loves Hercules, the muses are right behind her as statues watching over her the whole time. And if we go all the way back to when Hercules was younger and learned about his father, he says, I have to go to the Zeus temple to see about this. And when he does, guess who shows up in the flesh, or the stone? It's none other than Zeus himself animating this statue. But how can Zeus be here if he's stuck on Olympus? Well, before the conversation starts, we see a lightning bolt come down and strike the statue, and then it comes to life. So the statues for the Greek gods and Hercules is their way of coming down on Earth and interacting with humankind. But if that doesn't convince you that gods can basically transfer their souls into statues, what about this moment? The very moment after Megara finishes her song singing about Hercules, Hades appears inside of a statue, and he melts the whole statue from the inside out, not from behind it, not from on top of it, but he literally comes from the inside out. And this actually sets the precedent that they don't need to use any particular statue, but they can use almost any statue to take control over it. But alright, if gods can basically travel between their dimensions using statues, then how is this actually Cupid if Cupid is not within the Greek pantheon? Well, that's not Cupid. This is actually Eros. Now, if you didn't know this, Eros is actually the Greek version of Cupid. Cupid is just the Romanized name. But Eros basically does the same thing as Cupid, except he's actually a troublemaker. Eros is actually the child of chaos himself, and by that, he's a primordial being who loves to see things shaken up and stirred, which would make sense for the plot because after this moment, the plot moves forward. But how can we also tell that this statue was actually doing it on purpose? Well, what's kind of funny is that after Megara basically backs up onto it, it makes a little boink sound, which means that this isn't just a joke. that was on purpose. She didn't even say ow in this moment. She was just surprised by it. And at the very end of the film, where Hercules is reunited with his family, a group of gods surround him and congratulate him for becoming a god. But you notice this guy right here that's in purple with 2 wings? That is Eros. That is Cupid. And we know this because at the very beginning of the film, Eros is chilling at the party that Zeus threw for his baby. So Eros, wanting to cause some mischief, made Megara actually fall in love with Hercules, even though her original feeling was guilt about tricking a man into his demise. But is that a coincidence? I think not. And of course, if you like videos like this, make sure you reshare this, like it for a friend, hype the video up, and I'll see you in another video. Bye-bye. The true reason why Phineas's mom never sees any of his contraptions is not because of his stroke of luck, but it's actually because it's embedded inside of her DNA.